All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Ismail with you. We all know the economy as it used to be, as Adam Smith described it. We know the invisible hand. We know the central bank, banks. Many of these terms are familiar to us. Maybe we are studying at school, or maybe we just heard it from someone who studied economics. We know money, that's in our pocket. In Kurdistan, we have the cash money, mostly. And we have something that's called checking, getting cash from ATM, buying things, selling things, investing, and economic growth. These all terms are well known to us. While today, we are talking about another economy, the economy of blockchain, the economy that is not familiar to many of us, or maybe even to the experts that they are in the field, including maybe myself and some others. Blockchain economy is a wide world. We need to know more about it in order to use it and trust it. That's why today we have these ladies and gentlemen. In this panel discussion, we will discuss the blockchain economy. We will ask your question about blockchain. We will ask your concerns about how to get involved in the future economy, having a cryptocurrency and online digit money. So our guests are Mr. Eberhard and Robin and Veronica. We will be seated now, and I will let them describe and introduce themselves. Thank you. No, it's okay.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. So I'm Eberhard. I'm the president of the D-Health Foundation. We are located in the famous crypto valley in Zug, which is in Switzerland. And we are basically focusing on the healthcare economy, and we are providing a layer 1 blockchain for healthcare transactions. And we also have like our own. If you talk about the economy, we have to talk about money, and cryptocurrencies are the equivalent of money, so we have our own healthcare cryptocurrency.
Thank you. Robin?
Working? Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. So my name is Robin. I'm from Frankfurt, Germany, and I'm the managing director of the Global Institute of Leadership and Technology. We are actually an educational company that helps companies, governments, and all different kind of organizations to, first of all, get their leadership ready for what we are experiencing right now, and then at the same time implement technologies and get an understanding what the implications of those technologies are. In the terms of blockchain, I'm also the initiator of the Global Blockchain Initiative, which is one of the largest free-to-access educational platforms around blockchain technologies, with over 7,500 students as of now. And what we do is we provide free access to all the knowledge that is needed to survive in this blockchain revolution, and not only to survive, but also to shape it. And this is also my take for this panel here. How do we activate the masses? How do we activate the people to contribute, collaborate, and actually participate in this new economy that we're shaping?
Hello. First of all, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here in Erbil for the first time. My name is Veronica. I consult companies strategically on how they can navigate in this kind of world of tomorrow, like this blockchain ecosystem, with a very strong focus on Bitcoin and the so-called Lightning Network. And I also lecture at several universities in Germany about the exact topics.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I know two of you are most of education about blockchain, and Mr. Eberhard is the application of blockchain mostly in healthcare. So I will start this first part of the discussion with education. So most of young people here and gentlemen, they want to know more about blockchain economy. So the question is here, if we describe it in the simplest way, what's blockchain economy? And the question is open to Veronica and Robin, whoever is like to answer.
For me, what is blockchain economy? So I think with the invention, for me, as said, I have a very strong focus on Bitcoin. So what I see is that we are establishing a new, we have a new settlement layer for value transactions. So the basic invention that is very important to know that has been that has come out of the invention of Bitcoin is the solution of the so-called double spending problem. Meaning, like when we transfer anything on the internet, any information, it gets copied. And that is not an issue if I send a PDF file, but that is becoming an issue if I send value over the internet, yeah, money. In the end, money is also just data. So if I want to send money, until the invention of Bitcoin, I needed trusted third parties like banks or like payment service providers, PayPal, Visa, MasterCard, you name it. And now we have like a distributed network with some interesting economic incentives also. And with this distributed network, it is now possible to send value all around the globe without needing an intermediary. So through Bitcoin, the so-called double spending problem has been solved. And we basically, I think, are facing a new evolutionary step in the history of money, which is kind of groundbreaking.
So you mentioned the mediatory, like some banks are being in the middle of between me and you, sending money or buying something or investing in your company. So what does blockchain do in this old system? If we have an old system where like central bank is actually monitoring everything and making sure that transactions happen and make sure that everybody's faithful to what they do. What happened to this system in the blockchain economy? And the question now is for Robin, I think, if you can answer that.
Yeah, I think Veronica nailed it already pretty well, so there's not too much to add from the systematic perspective. But I always like to look at it from two perspectives, and this is trust and transparency. So if you look into most money transactions, you could always argue they work. And most of the time they also work, right? If we settle a bank transaction, most of the time they work in some way, especially if we have an established, well-working financial system. But nevertheless, we need to update systems on a regular basis, right? This is the same with every system that we design. And right now what we can see is that we can build more efficient systems that are at the same time serving more the people that are using that. One of those great aspects that I think that we should never underestimate is how can you create value rather than using value creation for the purpose of a transaction. So to put it in like a really simple sentence, right? Everybody needs banking, but nobody needs banks. And one of the main reasons why you're relying on certain systems is this trust problem, right? So how do you make sure that your money arrives in your bank account? And that's why we have like this layer of intermediaries, which has been serving quite well. And if you look all the way back to the Roman Empire, for example, they also had distributed systems. So money was flowing all around. But this was quite difficult, right? Because if you are, let's say you're in the northern parts of the empire, like let's say Dublin, and then you need to settle a transaction in Athens, well, the fastest you have to settle this transaction is Dolly the horse, right? And this is not really efficient. And now we have this technological layers to make this more efficient. And what's on top of that, and this is, I think, the really interesting aspect, is that you can go there by yourself and check if this actually happened. You probably don't need to do that, but you can. And you have like this distributed networks that help you with that. And that ultimately creates a new kind of trust and transparency that you can decide how much you want to participate in. And also at the same time, how much of this transparency you want to make use of, right? Because if you don't want to check it, you don't check it. Yeah. But you could. And this is a game changer.
Yeah. So let's get to the application of this blockchain economy. So I learned that, Mr. Eberhard, you have 4.5 years experience with your foundation in healthcare. You've been in Kurdistan for 2 days. Pretty much maybe you didn't have enough time to discover all the system here, but healthcare in Kurdistan is Ministry of Health, and we have clinics, private sector, hospitals. So sometimes I do some checkup in a hospital, but I go to another hospital, I find out they know nothing about me, about my previous history, health history. How does this get solved in a decentralized system using blockchain versus the decentralized health system that you have in your foundation trying to promote?
Yeah, I mean, like the financial industry, the healthcare industry very much relies also on intermediaries. In finance, you have the banks that you need in order to make transactions, and in healthcare, you also have a lot of intermediaries like insurances, the payers, hospitals, and they are the ones who really govern that field. You as a patient, you're just there to be treated, let's put it that way. And so you don't really have influence and power in the system. So what blockchain can bring to the healthcare system is kind of moving or shifting the influence or the control over what's going on, transactions, and especially about data ownership from the platforms to the individual users. So from a centralized way where the data sits with the insurances, with the hospitals or with the pharmacies or the pharma companies. You have all those silos, and of course they're protecting their IP rights because the data, the knowledge is their IP, especially when it comes to development of treatment, medication, implants, vaccinations, we see that. And so you as a patient usually don't have control over the data that's being collected around you when you get sick. Yes. Or when you need treatment. And what blockchain can do is it can give you, first of all, an identity in the digital system, and it can also enable you to collect, and that's basically what we're doing. Apart from having a blockchain, we have a decentralized storage system closely related to the blockchain where people can actually save a copy of their own data. Mm-hmm. And this sounds quite simple, but in the end, it's really shifting the power in the system from those who control the data from the platforms to you, because as Robin said, or as you said, once you have a copy of the data, you are free to share it with whoever you want. And that's fundamentally a shift that's enabled by blockchain technology.
So what I understood is, in this new decentralized system, I am, as a patient, I'm owner of my own data.
Correct.
So I can share it with any health provider in order to use it for my own good as a user of that system.
Right. The sad thing about health data is that everybody is after the data. All the big tech companies, for example, Google has a history of trying to aggregate data without you knowing it. And the sad thing about it is you as a patient usually are not really interested in the data that's being collected around you. So that's actually how we started out. We thought we give health data a value by tokenizing it, creating a token that has a monetary value so that people can, first of all, have an incentive to collect the data, because then they can kind of market or share the data, for example, for research purposes, and being part of the monetization of the data.
We will come back to that token in the next question. So now, while listening to Mr. Eberhard, I knew there's something concerning with privacy. So privacy, how can we ensure that switching from an old classic system that we get comfortable to a decentralized system where we have more disclosure of our privacy? How does that work? So I don't know if I ask, let me ask Veronica about this. Is there any concern with privacy?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And yeah, in general, the first thing I want to mention about privacy is that when we are talking about financial privacy, we are actually all very accustomed to having all our financial transactions being surveyed by a third party, yeah? Be it governmental institutions or be it bank or payment service providers. And so basically, we as humans at the moment, we hardly have any financial privacy. And when we're talking about financial privacy, others often think we have something to hide. Yeah? Whereas, so this is the default status, like the normal status. You don't have financial privacy. If you want to have financial privacy, then there is something illicit about it. You have something to hide. Is that really the case? Or shouldn't we also have the right to financial privacy? Because when I am talking about other private areas in my life, for example, me as a person, I can decide which of my opinions, of my whatever thoughts I am revealing to the world. Yeah? So on many other layers, we completely respect the privacy of others. Let's say I am journaling. I'm writing down every day my deepest thoughts. Every one of you, I guess here, would respect me to decide if I want to show that to you or if I don't want to show that to you. Whereas in the financial digital realm, the default status is like, hey, yeah, please everyone watch what I'm doing. So now, as said, I think we're kind of at a crossroads in human history where we start establishing financial networks outside of the existing ecosystem. So right now, we need to first philosophically think about how much financial privacy is actually a right of the individual, and then we need to implement privacy mechanisms on the protocol layers of those networks. And yeah, this is a focus this is a topic I start focusing more on, how to make sure we have these privacy mechanisms on a protocol layer, and also that it is easy for us to use these privacy mechanisms. Because, for example, at the moment, if an individual does transactions with Bitcoin or the Lightning Network, and they don't perfectly know how it works, it is actually not very private, especially on the Bitcoin main layer, because it is a public network. But we cannot expect everyone to be very tech-savvy and study how Bitcoin works. No, the people understanding that from a technical perspective, we need to make sure to implement applications so that users have privacy by default. Yeah? But not just on a technical layer, also on a regulatory perspective, we need to start these discussions. Like in Europe, for example, we have these GDPR regulations, General Data Protection Regulation, where there is certain protection of users' data, but actually banks and payment providers, they see all this data. So, and in other countries, though, people have even less privacy. So it's not just about having the technical tools to enable financial privacy, but to also speak to regulators and make sure that they grant this privacy. Because currently, we rather steer into the world where government officials are like, no, 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 you all have to reveal everything because we have to go against illicit actors in the world. The question is, to go against illicit actors, is it fair to surveil everyone else? Yeah? So what's the damage we're doing to everyone else? Yeah? That's on the philosophical layer.
Thank you, Veronica. That was actually a very good way to approach it. When we're talking, I remember one thing, that there's actually at the moment over 50,000 cryptocurrency online being traded. And in Kurdistan, in the past few years, when money is somewhere, so there are fraud in that place as well. So we faced many cases with millions of dollars of fraud and Ponzi scheme. It's all where like somehow around the cryptocurrency, around this new blockchain system, and people having fear through like looking at a number or something online that says cryptocurrency or a new type of money, a new type of economy. So Mr. Robin, how much financial illiteracy do we need to understand, and how we keep safe from these frauds and this dishonest, let's say, false company?
That's an excellent question that requires multiple perspectives to answer it. So I think the first really important perspective we should take is, and I don't want to now use the word blockchain, Bitcoin, or cryptocurrencies because they are tempting to mix up in the scenarios. But if we just look at a couple of milestones that we had there, right? So with Bitcoin, there was definitely a huge achievement in how this whole economy and this whole infrastructure could evolve. I think one really interesting and important aspect is to see blockchain not only as cryptocurrencies or something like that, but as an infrastructure technology. It's really an infrastructure technology, and we will see a lot of blockchain projects that won't be listed amongst those 50,000 because they will be settled between corporate environments, there will be private, there's all different kind of facades to that. Nevertheless, depending on how you want to put it onto a timeline, we could now talk about an infrastructure technology that is somewhere between 10 and 11 years old, which means basically nothing in evolutionary perspectives. And we're still in a phase where we're trying things out, where we're experimenting, where we need to figure out stuff on a protocol level, on a fundamental level. And this is great, because this is the invitation to experiment. This is the good part. The bad part about that is that it's also tempting to do the quick money, right? There's a whole industry of speculation that has evolved around blockchain, and I don't necessarily want to say it's all scam, it's all whatever, but a lot of those things are community driven. You can think about stuff like Dogecoin, which started with an official announcement as a fun currency. They mentioned this on their website that this is a joke. Nevertheless, people bite into that. And this created a new economy also now, right? And it got to this point where we need to take it probably in some way also serious. And then people start playing with that, right? They create like all these dog coins, all these other random cryptocurrencies. And yes, some of them are designed as scams. Others are designed as fun. Others are designed as real projects that just fail. We need to also appreciate the fact that there will be good projects that look good on paper, will not be there in 5 to 10 years. I would probably even go that far that 99% of projects that we see right now won't be existing in 10 years. But this is just the evolutionary process of figuring out what we can actually do, how we can build better systems, and how to look into that. Now, to answer your question, what do you need to know in terms of financial literacy? I think you should be aware of what you're doing, of what kind of thing you are actually buying in. There's nothing bad about trading fun coins like a Shiba Inu, like a Dogecoin or whatever, if you approach this like that, right? We also have people that go to the casino and play roulette. Yeah, it's a 50-50 bet if it works out in the best case. You can approach life like this also on that end. But if you are looking into solid projects, then you need to do your homework. And it's pretty hard to do your homework with a technology that is evolving so quickly. So you need to constantly be there. And ultimately, I think it comes back to a little bit like where we started this quest of building something better, trust and transparency. How do we make sure that we can trust the people building something? And the Bitcoin community is probably one of those strong ones because they have built that.
One thing to add, actually, in Kurdistan, we still have a financial literacy with the current system.
Yeah.
So there's many fraud happening in the current system, the fiat money, the central bank, the banks.
That's true.
We still don't understand the banks. Maybe we do in a certain level, but that the majority of us, we're still struggling understanding how does financial system work? How does financial investment work? So what do you recommend to start off? Should we start off understanding the current system, then go to the blockchain, or should we directly go to understand the new system?
Yeah. So also really good question, and I think we also need two perspectives on that. One is, what can you know nowadays? And this is a really hard one, and this comes back to the education system that we built on. Right now our educational system is built, and this is true by the way for all countries and all educational systems we have on this world, that we train people to give answers. Right? The system is designed, I give you a knowledge piece, then you do a test, and then give you an answer, and it's either right or wrong. In a world where we have constant evolvement, where we have constant experimentation, where we don't know what is next, we actually need to train for collaboration and also this art of being wrong, right? Because this is the birthplace where you can have some creation if you have like this positive tension between different kind of perspectives. And I think we need this discourse way more. And it comes back to like really the educational system. How do you empower people to think? And how do you empower people to go out and not just follow one particular route, but really think? I mean, you're an economist yourself. You know that economics is all about finding options. And we should also create these options in educational systems so that people can have conscious choices about what is out there. And I want to give you one example here. And I really want you all to ask yourself this question. Do you understand the internet?
Do we? I don't know.
And we see the internet as something like the most normal thing on this planet.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think Eberhard wants to come.
Thank you. Eberhard, tokens for healthcare.
Well, first of all, I would like to add to the privacy question, because I mean, health data, the data about yourself, about your healthcare, also your DNA data, that's very private stuff that you shouldn't share. So, and working with public blockchains like we do, you might ask yourself, how does it work? Everything is public, but at the same time, it's very private. How does it work? So I give you a brief example how it works in our case. So the patient comes to a hospital, and then they scan a QR code just with their phone, like a QR code you see everywhere here. And then they download an app, and they are like MetaMask. It's a kind of a similar concept that allows you to control your identity, create sub-identities, because from your private key you can derive in a deterministic way endless number of sub-identities. That's just the address. I mean, in our case, it's a different blockchain address than the Bitcoin ones, but we have our own addresses on the blockchain. And to the outside world, they are totally unrelated. You can use one identity for transactions with your insurance, one identity or account for transactions with a pharmacy. So from the outside, they're totally unrelated, and nobody can really, with data mining, see that they are related to transactions. But in the background, you can consolidate all the identities in one wallet. And so to the outside world, nobody knows who you are. And that was originally also the intent of the internet. In the digital world, nobody knows that you are a dog. But now we know that in the internet nowadays, that's not the case. But blockchain technology can reinstate that kind of privacy around yourself, and that's basically also what we are using, because very often players like pharma companies, they're not allowed to know who you are, but they must know that, for example, you are a certain type of patient, and you are allowed to receive a certain kind of medication, and you are allowed to receive a discount on that medication. So they can check it without, the credential can be checked without knowing who you are. So even if it's public, it can protect your privacy.
So with the new system, my health information is private. The default is private, is it?
I mean, if you remember, I said that now you can control the access to the data yourself. So the way it works, somebody sends you a message, I would like to use your diabetes data for research purposes. then you can say, I decline it, no connection will be established. But if you say, I consent that you use my data, you're not only giving the consent like what you do nowadays in a written form, you give him a key to decrypt that part of data that you allow this institution or this person to view. You can also take it back at some point.
So what's the role of the token in this system?
The rule of the token, I mean, first of all, in a public blockchain system, you need a cryptocurrency or like a native token of the blockchain in order to pay for transactions. Because we all know writing on a public blockchain that costs some transaction fees, and that usually has to be paid in the native currency of that blockchain. Reading is public, that's free, everybody can do that. But writing, you need to have or for transactions, you need to have the native currency of the blockchain. That's one utility of the token. And the other one is whatever the partners that are building on top of our infrastructure intend to use the token for. Some use it for paying patients or individual users for sharing the data. Some use it, and actually we're starting very soon a project like Step-In, it's kind of similar, where people, when they do sports, they earn token. And on the other side, there are companies basically inflating value, saying we buy tokens and give it to those who do something, or tell us, for example, Reebok, for example, tell us how the sneaker was that you bought, and so on and so on.
Thank you, thank you. So one of the things that I kind of bring to my attention, that in the future, in the next 20 years or 50 years, we will have a new reality where blockchain economy is taking over the classic economy. So, Veronica, what do you have to say about that? Do you think that's too bold statement, or is it reality?
To be honest, if I really zoom out in human history, and I see ourselves only as a small part in human history, and in this process of zooming out, I look at the evolution of money, yeah? And basically there have been 3 forms of money in human history so far. It is commodity money, yeah? All kinds of like gold, but also beads, cattle, rice, whatever humans used as money in history. And then the next, the final form kind of commodity money is the gold standard, where we started to establish central banks. We could deposit our gold in the banks, and for that gold in the bank was issuing a paper and with this paper, I was allowed to redeem the gold that was in the bank. The advantage of this was I could very easily trade it, and I could also have smaller denominations, because with gold, it's very difficult to split it. Yeah? So what we did, we put gold in the banks, and the bank issued this piece of paper that we now know as cash. The thing then, the third form of money is then pure so-called fiat money. With fiat money, I mean every money like euro, dollar, dinar, yen, you name it, all the currencies we are using. In 1971, though, the United States, they started to depeg the piece of paper from the gold in the bank. Meaning like they were just starting to issue more of these paper slips, but actually the underlying value of redeeming this paper slip for gold was gone. And one could even theorize if this is a de-evolution, a step backwards in the evolution of money, because one of the most important properties of a good money is that it is scarce, meaning like you cannot just produce more of it. Whereas now in our fiat economy, with like the push of a button, we can create more money. And we see this with all central bank sheets around the globe in the last 10, 15, 20 years. They quadrupled, they 10x, they 15x'd. Yeah? So this also means, the question is, when a central bank is inflating the balance sheets, do we, as persons a little bit lower in the chain of receiving this new money, do we also receive that, or where is the new money trickling? My value, the money I'm holding, is actually getting diluted. So what we're having now with this invention of cryptocurrencies is digital scarcity. That means like we suddenly have digital assets like Bitcoin that cannot be diluted by any central party. And I think that's a groundbreaking step. And let's think further, if these systems like Bitcoin, if Bitcoin is really living up to the theory of becoming a global money, this would take away some of the power of nation states by default. And it's not like Bitcoin is not fighting central banks or nation states or anything. It is not at all in its mission or so. It's rather like, hey, we built a different monetary system here, and everyone can educate themselves about this new money and then decide what is the better money, what is the money I want to hold. If Bitcoin lives up to this potential of a global money, though, and nation states are slowly losing the power over the most powerful tool, which is the monopoly of monetary creation. If this is taken away just by people using other money, then they will lose in power. This is just a logical conclusion. But not fighting the old system, but rather creating something new, and then let every individual on this planet decide what is the harder money, what do I trust more in the long term. And we have to admit, at the moment, we're in the very, very, very beginning of this whole journey. And Robin was doing a strong emphasis, and I'm completely with him on that, how important education is. And don't rely on governmental education, but educate yourselves about the topic. Yeah, and I think we are having very interesting times ahead. As said, we're still in the very, very beginning of all this, and there is hardly any trust about digital assets. Yeah, the question is, can and will this be established? Yeah, and yeah, everyone. This is also like a recommendation from my side. Educate yourself about the topics. Start with educating yourself about Bitcoin, because if you look, there is 15,000 cryptocurrencies now circulating in the world. But if you look at the total market capitalization of all these cryptocurrencies, 45 in the last couple of months, 42 to 45% of the total market cap is on Bitcoin. So if you educate yourself 10 hours about digital assets, at least put 4.2 to 4.5 hours into Bitcoin. Yeah? Because many people think, oh, there is 15,000 and you have all these crazy tokens, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, reading 5 minutes into Bitcoin and then focusing on some crazy little token project. Mm-hmm. Don't fall for it. And it's very difficult to resist, because there is like all this crazy stuff floating around. Resist. Look at the fundamentals, and yeah, because we're very early on, and if you start educating yourself now, in 3 years, you're already way ahead in the curve of many others.
You should stay longer in Kurdistan.
Excuse me?
You should stay longer in Kurdistan in order to have time to educate people about it. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. So, how many years do we need to understand it fully and be safe? In Kurdistan, as we mentioned, we are still new to many things. So many of my students in the economic department, they don't know it. They don't know how this can take over, how this new economy can evolve, and how this is scarce. We know the old system is scarce because we have a central bank. We kind of agree to trust the central bank in order to not issue too much money because that creates inflation. And in this new blockchain technology, there is some ambiguity. So can you help us clarify this ambiguity about this blockchain scarcity, let's put it this way?
Wow, that's the Pandoras box that you're now opening. Yeah, so I think like a lot of those discussions we could have now are quite double-edged swords, right? You could always argue for and against, and it goes quite a long way. I think we should look at a couple of factors that we are currently facing in the world, right? One thing is, if you take just the global average with all this ugly stuff that is still going on in the world, we're actually pretty good as society overall speaking, right? And in total, life has never been better on this planet. Unfortunately, it came at a price. And we see now that we are in a stage where we urgently need to update the way we are operating our starship, right? We are all living here. And I always like to frame this in two perspectives. One is the global perspective. This is everything like climate change, biodiversity, hunger, diversity, like all those things that are globally, right? It doesn't help if you decide now here to be the greenest country on the planet, where you protect all the biodiversity, where everybody can live a great life in freedom and has access to water and food and everything, if your neighbors are not doing that. It doesn't help if one country contributes to that, right? Because this is a global system that is so tightly connected, and we all are part of this one planet. We all need to protect it. So this is really important. But then you have like these hyper-local challenges, right? Erbil has different challenges than Berlin. Berlin has different challenges than Paris, and Paris has different challenges than Tokyo. Nevertheless, we have all people, right? It's all about the human factor. It's about creating a life worth living. And this ambiguity, to come to this point now, is just being passive. Ambiguity is just another fancy word for being passive. We need to get comfortable with the fact that we need to figure out the stuff that is yet to come. We don't know this yet. And I think everybody that claims to know what's coming next should be avoided at all costs. Because we need to work on that. We need to figure it out. And I give you another probably interesting number, or like two numbers actually. So if you look into the global workforce, in just 3 years, in 2025, 75% of the global workforce, meaning people that will work, will be the millennial generation. So these are people that are digital and analog at the same time. It's a really interesting generation. And the second time is, and you are, especially here in Kurdistan, are a prime example for that. Over 50% of the population living on this planet is below the age of 30. This is a really young society. You are at a median age here in Kurdistan was 20.65, something like that. So even younger. And at the same time, this young generation is almost nowhere represented. Nowhere. Even though they make the majority of the people on this planet. And at the same time, they have the longest lifespan to build something. So the question is, can we make ambiguity fun? Can we make it fun to enjoy not knowing what is happening tomorrow? And this comes again to this educational discussion, right? Where we say like, if I ask you a question, you need to answer. How can we change it that we say like, here's a question, come back in 3 months if you have an idea on how to do that? Why can't we appreciate that? If people say, I have no idea about that, I have no idea how to do it, but I go and do my research. It's like what Veronica says, right? Go out, do your homework.
Is there a specific answer? Is there a standard answer?
Can you please repeat that? That was somewhat clear.
Is there a standard answer, the standard trustworthy answer, or we should just look to find the answer ourselves? Or
No.
is there like a specific curriculum or education that we can find our way through kindergarten, through primary school, in order to understand this upcoming economy?
Yeah,
Is there something like that?
I mean, you as an economist knows best, right? If you have the options of choice, if you have A and B, the best thing you can do is find C.
So should I invest in it in order to know it, or should I know it and then invest in the new blockchain economy?
It's just figuring it out. It's a journey where we don't have the answer. And I think this is exactly the point. This ambiguity, this not specific answer, that we try to find a specific answer. We need to get rid of finding the specific answer. But having this dialogue, having this collaboration, having this urge to find something better, knowing that it probably will take us time.
I think I will take this question to Eberhard. So should we start educating ourselves before investing or not?
Well, it's always. I'm a psychologist by training, so I would say that it's always best to make an informed decision. But very often in life, the opposite happens. Your decisions are driven by some input that you see on TV or on your phone, and that really, especially in the younger generation, that triggers their behavior. If we look at what happens with TikTok, and so you can see that decisions are being made in a split of a second, and very often they are not rational. And so, but when it comes to Bitcoin or in general digital assets, you should really know what you're doing, because if you don't know what you're doing, there's no hotline where you can call, oh, I lost my private key, so can you help me? So really, if you are making not informed decisions there, it costs you a lot of money. And
yes.
I mean, I've been seeing that people that I know, that they lost quite some money because they started not know exactly what to do, and then they said, okay, I still have that one Bitcoin sitting on my computer, but there's no way I can really move that and make it cash it in. So I think those stories, we all have that when we started using blockchain applications, i.e. cryptocurrencies. But what we also see, if we really want to have mass adoption of blockchain, and I mean, when we talk about healthcare, it's not young people usually that are exposed to the healthcare system, but it's usually the older generation that comes to treatment centers, and asking them to open a wallet, writing down your seed phrase, 24 words, I mean, you're lost. They will never use it. So it really you have to make it easy for people to make the right choices. And that's where I think the blockchain industry can work, or has to work still, and improve on making it accessible to the masses.
There's always two types of people. The people who like to learn, then invest, and there are the risk takers who like to invest and then learn. I think I'm pointing at Robin now. Okay, so let's open the discussion to anybody who have question from the audience. So I see my colleagues can pass the mic. If it's in Kurdish, I will translate.
That's okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your great information. Actually, before starting my question, I would like to say that the future, I'm sure, is going toward the economy of the blockchain, because as we know that the new version of the internet is started by the blockchain technology. We are now living in the IoT, information of things, or Internet of Things, and by using the blockchain technology, the Internet of Things will be transferred to the Internet of Value. I mean, by value that the information, or you can say the money, it can be translated or transaction between node and node. So, I have two questions. The first one is, I have two questions.
Yes.
One of question is for Ms. Veronica, and the other one is for Mr. Robin. Actually, we are talking about many types of blockchain technology. One of them is private blockchain, and the other is public blockchain. So, in your opinion, when we are talking about the economy of a blockchain, in your opinion, does the economy is going toward the private blockchain or public blockchain? If it will going toward the public blockchain, you know that, like the Bitcoin, for example, the technology behind the Bitcoin is blockchain. It's forbidden in many countries. So if we are talking about the economy, we cannot going toward the Bitcoin because, for example, in Iraq, it's forbidden to be used. So, in your opinion, the economy is going to the private or to the public? For me as a user, I want to start my business toward the economy of a blockchain. So I'm going to, in your opinion or your advice, to private or to public. My question to Mr. Robin is, you know that behind the blockchain technology there are many terms like elliptic curve cryptography, hash function, miners, and so many processes or algorithms that they are. For me, how we can, or as a user, when you are talking about that system has a blockchain technology or using the blockchain technology, how we can differentiate between the simple distributed database and the blockchain to be, for me to be trusted, as Mr. Ismail said, that how we can trust that this system or this application containing the blockchain technology or using the blockchain, or it is a simple distributed database. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Any other question? We will take the questions and then we will take the answers and then we wrap up. So anybody have questions? Yes. I'm writing the question, so I will remind you about it. I write the question. Okay.
Questions?
Yes.
Yeah,
No
okay.
worries. No worries.
Well, I have a simple question here. My question is, why blockchain economy? Why we need it right now? And what's the problem you're trying to solve here? Is it all about the decentralization? And we already know this blockchain economy has some problems that has to be solved, like legal issues, all digital contracts, security, and transparency. We know they have all these kind of problems. Well, for me, still I'm struggling to understand why we need the blockchain economy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Should we take one more question and then we wrap up? Yes. This gentleman in the front line.
Thank you for joining us. I have two questions. The first one is when you say that Bitcoin and crypto, so you say that the cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin are decentralized and are not controlled.
Can you please make mic closer and raise your voice so we can hear you?
Okay.
There's too much background noise over here. I can't hear.
Okay. So when we are saying about blockchain, I mean the cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, we say that it's decentralized and it's not controlled. But if we are looking at the price of Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies, it's following the major companies' prices, and we see that lately it's been dumping. And what do you think? Like we are looking at a solution, but the solution is kind of linked to the problem that we already have. That's the first question that I have. And the second one, one moment.
Okay. Did you guys hear the first question? Did you hear the first question? Yeah. Yeah, okay, good. I didn't hear it clearly, so that's why I'm asking. Okay.
Okay.
Do you have the second question?
I'm still thinking. I forgot.
Okay, so we'll take the answer, then come back to you.
Okay.
All right, we have 3 questions. So we have one for Veronica, one for Robin, and I will take one for you to have distribution. So, Veronica, are we having toward private or public blockchain? And I assume he means public means government everybody. So where are we heading to?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for this adding public blockchain is government. This is actually not the case. This is what we normally relate to the word public. But public blockchain means it's a blockchain where everyone can spin up a so-called node in the network, and every node in the network is writing down every single transaction of the blockchain. Yeah? So a blockchain, one part of it is a so-called distributed ledger. Every node in the network is writing down all information. So if someone wants to compromise with that ledger, it's very difficult because everyone wrote down the data. This is what public blockchain means, and private blockchain, on the other hand, means only certain parties can spin up such a node, meaning like only certain parties can see the transactional data. Yeah? For example, one could make a private blockchain between several banks. Personally, I think, though, that the groundbreaking invention is to have public blockchains, to have no entry barrier for any individual to confirm transactions, to make transactions, and so on, to be part of this global monetary network. But this invention is so groundbreaking that we're getting scared, and it's very difficult to grasp. So what we do is like, we fall back to traditional thinking and say like, yeah, but let's rather make like maybe a distributed database of 5 banks, not just one bank like it is now, but 5 banks. So this would be a private ledger. But if we look back to the evolution of the internet, we also have internet, which is global, accessible to everyone if you're not in North Korea or so. It's a global network. And we have intranets, like IBM and so on. They have their company internal intranets. And yeah, they are useful if I want to know what the food in my canteen is or so. But the groundbreaking evolution was the internet, a global monetary a global information network that is accessible by everyone. And then you can have your closed intranet systems, yeah, company internal or so. Yeah, they add value, but internet versus intranet, I mean, and what I see is like kind of a copy-paste situation 25 years later, but with value. We have public blockchains. This is where I think the value and the evolution is coming from. And then we can make private blockchains. It's like, yeah, maybe more decentralized what we have now, but compared to a global monetary network, it's like, meh, yeah. And like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, so many companies were like starting to establish their private blockchains, and we're talking about how they revolutionize supply chain management with their private blockchains and blah, blah, blah. 4 years later, there is not one single use case that is properly making a serious added value to humanity from my perspective. Yeah.
Thank you, Veronica. I will kind of like distort the order. I'm coming here this time. So the question that was, do we need a blockchain economy? What's the purpose? What problem it solves?
Well, I think that adds to the discussion around private versus public blockchain. Why do you need something? Because right now, a private blockchain is kind of the equivalent to what we have now, because someone or some entity can really decide who is participating and, for example, who is allowed to make transactions in the network. And so this is the current state. If you look at the banking, I mean, the banks can say, okay, you're not allowed to pay to transfer your money in another country. And right now, the hospital can say, no, we're not sending you your information, or in dentistry, it's the dentist owns your x-rays, and they're not sharing it with other dentists because they're saying that they are afraid of losing you as a customer. So how does that relate to the current state? So this is, some entity can rule the system, but there's no trust in the system because they can change the rules, and you cannot do nothing against it. So I would say in the world where we have so many different interests, bad actors, lack of transparency, we need that kind of new economy that to re-establish trust, because a public blockchain cannot be altered. Everybody can contribute to the system, run a node, and that's basically the distributed system that cannot be ruled by one entity, and that's where the trust lies, because nobody has control, and that's why we need a new economy.
Thank you. So I think you have 1 minute. It's a big challenge for you.
He can do that.
My guys are telling me like done. So is a blockchain another like online database system, or is it way different? So I know it's a very big challenge for you to make that in 1 minute, so please try.
Well, it's certainly not just a database, just from a technological perspective, but I mean, it comes back to what I said earlier. We need to figure out what we will build with that. We need to experiment, we need to play, we need to build. So that's the answer to that. And what will be the case for that, we don't know yet. There will be so many different kind of opportunities that we will definitely see something happening. And it's definitely not only a database. And I mean, you asked the question about why. This is now the cheesy answer. So if you go to YouTube and type in my name, I just had last week a lecture on exactly that for 2 hours, which is publicly available. So feel free to watch this. The question now is, if we talk about digitalization, this is my last sentence. This is my last sentence.
Okay.
If we talk about digitalization, we need to talk about infrastructure. So what is the infrastructure about that, and stop only talking about using more software. So we need to build a digital economy that is respecting what we are now seeing in the cyber-physical space. And this is a big experiment, and everybody can contribute, so get out, kick ass, and don't accept the bullshit.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Veronica. Thank you, Eberhard. Coming here on a flight and now flying today, so thank you for being here. Thank you for the audience. I hope we could cover some aspects. It's a big new thing, and sorry for the one who couldn't have time to finish the questions and get the answers. So thank you very much and have a good day. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you a lot for moderating this, and also thanks a lot for having us here in Erbil. It was really an honor to be here. Great potential the city has.